Star Wars only, I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
The Last Jedi comic book just came out, and it's exactly what you would think. It's The Last Jedi, but retold in a comic book form, and a lot of people are liking Luke's death in this because Luke's death in The Last Jedi, for me, wasn't very emotional, and I don't know many people who thought it was emotional or even cried during it, but it was supposed to be a very emotional scene, him looking out at the twin suns, kind of mirroring exactly how his journey began, and when that part happened, I was like, I got annoyed with it, honestly, when it happened in the movie, because I was so annoyed with the movie by then. But the comic book does give him a very nice death compared to what happened in the movie, and it is the exact same death, but it actually gives Luke some final thoughts, instead of him just looking out to the sun and just kind of, inhaling and exhaling and just passing on like a fart in the wind. He actually says in his thoughts right here, "And so it ends as it began, by the light of two suns before stepping into a larger world." Now, reading that out loud, I will say, that is emotional, and that is a better death than what he got, having some final thoughts and everything. And let's be honest, The Last Jedi was a very weird Star Wars movie. It did a lot of different things than a traditional or even close to the original trilogy kind of Star Wars movie. But one thing for me, if you're going to push the envelope as far as Rian Johnson tried to push it, why not push it a little further and do this and have it where, we've never been into a Star Wars movie where you can hear like a character's thoughts like you can in some other movies. We could have done it with this movie right here, where you just hear Luke's thoughts at the end, where he says, "And so it begins as it ends, or so it ends as it began, by the light of two suns before stepping into a larger world." I think that him being his final thoughts, him thinking that before he dies or passes on, would have been a little more emotional and more touching, and I like that. So I didn't enjoy The Last Jedi. I'm the first guy to hate on it and tell you I don't like Luke in the movie. It wasn't emotional for me when he passed on because it's hard for me to be attached to a character who spends the entire movie complaining about his life, I guess, or whatever happened, and just kind of seems a little bit like the whole reason everything went wrong. So it's kind of like, well, I mean, why am I going to cry when you die? Because when I want you to be dead, you kind of screwed it all up. You tried to kill Kylo Ren. I mean, this is all your fault, dude, so why do I care that you died? So that's kind of how I felt at the end, where I was just like, oh, I mean, he died. And for me, when I initially watched the movie the first time, I like when I did a little tisk thing whenever the twin suns came up, like, because it annoyed me internally, because I was like, dude, you're just trying to play with emotions when the entire film hasn't been good. But that, like I said, that's just me. I don't like the film at all. But I will say this is by far a very good death for Luke, at least in the comic book version, compared to what he had in the movie, giving him some final thoughts. And I would have liked that. And that little touch would have made me appreciate his death a little more than what we got. But that's just my personal opinion. I think it's kind of interesting having a character give his final thoughts before he passes on. Yeah, because we don't know, no one here knows what it's like to die. So we don't know what we're going to think or anything before we pass on. So it is kind of interesting to see him, before he passes on, thinking and being like, this is how it ends. And another cool thing I like about it is that it says, before stepping into a larger world, and that, of course, implies him moving on to the Force, like Yoda did, like Obi-Wan did, and Qui-Gon. That's really interesting, because it is, a mirroring and parallel between this and A New Hope, where he looks at the twin suns, and that's not entirely where his journey begins. That's a misconception between a lot of people, but that is where his journey kind of started in a way, because he looks out and that's what he wanted. He wanted to go out into an adventure, and he wants to go into a larger world, and that's how Luke always has been and always will be. So, yeah, I like this. I like this little touch that the comic book did, and I really do appreciate it. And so, I don't know. I hope to see a little more about the Force, the larger world he's going in, that he talks about in Episode 9. I still hope they keep the Force a mystery. That's one thing that the Force had really going for it in the original trilogy, is that it was just this mystical thing. Anybody and everybody could have had it, and it's just kind of there. And you either have it or you don't. And I like that. It's mystical, it's mysterious. That's one of the reasons I like the ones from the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars, is they're very mysterious. It's like, well, where'd they come from? How'd this all start? It's questions like that keeps you intrigued. That's one of the reasons I like J.R.R. Tolkien, the writer for Lord of the Rings. My favorite wizards are the blue wizards, because you don't know anything about them, and it's kind of like, well, what happened to them? So the mystery part of it is really cool, and they're doing that well with the Force, at least in this part right here. So I'm excited to see what J.J. Abrams can do with that. But tell me your thoughts. Do you like Luke's ending in the comic book compared to the movie? Do you think it's more emotional, less emotional? Do you even like Luke's death in the movie? I know for one, I didn't like the movie and I didn't like the way he died, but that's just me. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So comment your thoughts below. What are your guys' thoughts? I'm Star Wars Only. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you all next time. May the Force be with you always.